said, "It is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper, a woman." And he brought her to man. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She called she shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh."
All right. So based on these two uh, sections, why would God declare that it was not good for man to be alone?
Well, we see that in the context of all the animals having their male and female partners, God said it wasn't good for Adam to be alone in that context, that he needed his counterpart, the female.
Okay. Is there any other reason why you think it was not good for Adam to be alone?
Well, if you want to take it to the spiritual perspective, I noticed that, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but in the next chapter, chapter 3, the reason why, or one of the reasons why they Eve falls and is subdued by the serpent is because Adam wasn't with her. So alone, it was not good for man or woman to be alone in the context of spirituality. We are to help each other be saved. So I'm supposed to be my wife's cheerleader to get to heaven, and she's supposed to be my cheerleader so I can get to heaven. We have to help each other spiritually.
So I'm going to make an argument that those are valid points, but the reality is that chapter 1 verse 26 gives us our most uh, I would say that the strongest case as to why, as soon as God saw Adam alone, he immediately declared that it was not good. So it says in chapter 126, then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Who's not alone?
The Son and the Holy Spirit.
Exactly. So if man was created in their likeness and in their image, and they did not operate in a singular way, then Adam, being a singular being, was missing something that he could not be made in the likeness of God if he were alone, because God operates as a trinity, which means that Adam would always have had something missing had he remained alone. Now, that being said, why Eve, and what made Eve such a good partner for him?
May I
Yes, you may.
may I take a stab at it? Um, well, I'm not sure what you have in mind, Ruben, but what comes to my mind is that man and woman are modeled after the husband, the groom, and the bride of Jesus and the church. So here we have an example of that intimacy, that closeness that God desires with man, with humanity, I should say, is seen in the model of the institution of marriage, where the closest husband and wife, and we're all adults here, right? The closest husband and wife physically is when they're in the act of sex, of intercourse. And that is what we look forward to as a church, in the sense that we are going to be reunited with the groom when Jesus comes back. We're going to be physically reunited. And that is going to be something beautiful, something we're looking forward to. And let me just qualify that real quick by saying that in Bible times, when people were married as like Jesus' parents, Jesus' earthly parents, Joseph and Mary, they were married, but they hadn't actually had sex, even though they were already married. And so it was almost in our modern day context of the engagement. I think they called it the betrothal. Betrothed, yeah. And they had courting and all that anyway. But so that's how we could be married but have not had intercourse with Jesus, in that, sanctified, strictly pure analogy. And maybe, I don't know, that's what I was thinking.
So what? Anybody else? What made Eve that? So he could have created a friend for him first and then a wife, but why go there immediately? Right.
God had a plan at the beginning. You know, like she said, the Trinity is three in one, and they each have their own character, their own side to them. And I feel like Adam wasn't complete in that he was complete as a person, but the woman had other characters, other things, attributes, yeah. Trying to find the right word, that showed God's character as well. So if we are created in his image as a race, male and female, I believe that we each had different attributes that made the human race complete.
So here's my, and this is not something that I, have thought of for a long time. This is something that while during the study, it began making more sense. So when I first asked you why it was not good for man to be alone, we see how the fact that a plural yet singular God created man in his image, yet there's a plurality to God, but there was a singularity to Adam, right? But they all worked as one. So in order for Adam to have that type of relationship, then he needed somebody that he could become one with. You see, because then in verse chapter 2, verse 24, it says, "The man shall leave his father and mother and join his wife, and they shall become one flesh." If he would have created another male to be there as a companion with him, he would not have been able to achieve that oneness that you can achieve with your spouse. So what God is ultimately doing is, I created you in our image, which means that we have the perfect intimacy in terms of relationship. And because of that perfect intimacy, we work as one singular God, yet in three distinct characters. So God says, well, I'm going to make a partner for you, but that partner is going to be created for the sole purpose that you can achieve what we are achieving. Now, it's 3 in 1, and then you have 2 in 1, but the reality is that humanity can still achieve that Trinity, because we know through Scripture that if man and woman leave God out of that formula, that they are, in essence, doomed to fail. So in essence, what God says, I'm going to give you a partner comparable to you, so on an equal playing field, so that you can unite. Because remember, when you look at the Trinity, they are all still seen at, not only are they see each other as, but they are seen by us as an equal level of three, right? It's not one above the other. They all work as one. Different roles, different characteristics, but neither is on top of the other. And that is important for us to realize, because in a patriarchal world and the Bible being written in a patriarchal society, there tends to be that shift towards male dominance, and that was not what God intended. God intended man and woman to be equal, so that when God is interjected into that relationship, they all work together for one purpose. You see? So the reason why Eve was the perfect person to create first was, so I am a God that works 3 in 1, and I see that you alone is not good because I created you to be like us. So I'm going to create that partner that you can now be one with, and then now you interject our relationship that we already had, and now we are now, in essence, able to say that you are a mirror image of your creator. And I don't know why it took 44 years to figure that out, but I'm glad that at least it did. Morning, sir. How are you? So that is, I think, something very important for us to kind of keep in the back of our head. The fact that, when God declared that it was not good for Adam to be alone, was a direct result of the fact that he was created in the image of God. And when we say God, we mean all three. And the reason why Eve came first is that so Adam could achieve that same type of intimate relationship with her and with God, so that they can basically be a mirror image of their creator. Now, I want to go to Ecclesiastes, right? The relationship between husband and wife we're gonna tackle in a little bit. Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. We're gonna take a stab about companionship versus the institution of marriage, and this is something that I believe is not emphasized enough in terms of how we deal with friendships, companions, and sometimes even family. So could somebody read for me Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12?
2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if 2 lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if 1 prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Is it through 12?
Yep.
13? Okay.
So, based on that, do we know who that second person is when he's talking about a companion? Could it be a spouse? He's not necessarily very clear on who that companion is. And even though it says if 2 lie together, they'll be able to keep warm, it's not necessarily that he's talking about an intimate relationship there, right?
It could be like sisters and brothers, like when they're